Call the school board business meeting for September 14th to order. Barb, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Board Chair Hefner.
Here.
Vice Chair O'Loughlin.
Here.
Treasurer Lehman.
Here.
Clerk Pelletier.
Here.
Director Pearson.
Here.
Director Potacek.
Here.
Director Stivland.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you. Would you please stand for a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our district mission, Shelley?
Yes. The mission of Stillwater Area Public Schools, in partnership with students, family, and community, is to develop curious individuals who are active and engaged leaders in an ever-changing world by challenging all students as they travel along their personalized learning pathways.
Thank you. And our school board goals, Paula?
As board members, we are morally and legally responsible for an equitable and quality education for each and every student in our district. As board members, we ensure decisions are made in the interest of all students, E through 21, for future generations impacted by our actions. Goal number 1, we will partner with administration to assure all students are provided equitable opportunities to reach their maximum potential. Number 2, participate in efforts that support student and community engagement. Number 3, direct district efforts to develop a balanced budget for 2017-18. And number 4, exercise effective self-governance.
Thank you. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Second down this way. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We've moved our superintendent's report to the next item on the agenda, and superintendent.
All right. Thank you, Chair Hepner. We are eager to share with you this evening the first day report, and this is really something that we do annually to give the board and the community an update about what's happening in the schools the first month of school. And so we have some numbers to share with you on enrollment and a number of other things this evening. Look at that. There we go. All right, thank you. Our first day of enrollment numbers are trending really well. The first day of school, we had 8,328 students in grades K through 12 in the district. That's a decline of just 73 students from October of last year, which despite the incoming class of kindergarten students being 87 students smaller than our graduating class, that's great news for us. It means that even though our class size is declining for kindergarten students coming in, the discrepancy is not as much as we thought. We're also very pleased that our pre-K numbers have doubled since 2015, and many of you know that we have preschool now in every school, and that this allows our staff to build relationships with families and keep them within our system, hopefully. So we are really pleased to see that when we looked at our numbers for this year. Remember, enrollment numbers fluctuate throughout the year and through the month still as we determine what students are here and what students might have made other choices. So as they settle into our schools, we'll share again in October and beginning of November a full report. If you look back at our transportation, we have 8,884 students transported within the district. And this transportation this year was especially challenging because not only did we have boundaries, but we also had a little bit of a snag with having enough bus drivers. And I know that Mr. Peterson is here today, who works with Minnesota Central and has been helping us work on that transportation issue. Food service, we have 446 breakfasts served and 3,852 lunches served by our food service staff. When you look at our school-age care, we have over 700 students enrolled in our school-age care. And as I mentioned earlier, if you look at the numbers for early childhood, they've doubled within the last couple of years. 431 students attend alternate schools within the district. So they might live in a Stonebridge boundary and choose to go to Lily Lake. More than 85% of our alternative requests were refilled this year. Where we have the largest lists are waiting for Stillwater Middle School and then at the new elementary at Brookview in the southern part of the district. When you look at our elementary class sizes, you can see that they're balanced across the district this year with all classes within the range. That's a huge difference from last year. If you remember last year, the board designated money from the fund balance because we had about 10 classrooms that we were looking at multi-grading. And so to be able to have our elementary classes within that average class size range is pretty significant for us. Living up to the promises for building opportunities to learn and discover, this year students have access to support services in every building every day. That may be a school psychologist or student advocate, it could be intervention teachers or English teachers. And part of why this is so important is the community has really reached out and responded and told us how important it is for our students to have mental health support and social emotional support. And so we feel pleased to be able to offer to our students each and every day, which is a change from in the past. How many of you speak Spanish? Hablas español. Jamela does. First class of kindergarten students was enrolled in Spanish immersion. Our immersion program is located at Lake Elmo Elementary, and we have approximately 50 students enrolled. The program will be added to each year through 5th grade, and then we'll be adapting our middle school and high school programming and developing that as our students age into the program. Other opportunities I mentioned earlier that we have pre-K at every building. Expanded gifted and talented programming. We have many new students enrolled in GATE this year. We have about 15 families from out of district and a couple more that are looking at our GATE program. And we haven't done any marketing for that program yet, so we're very excited about the changes that the staff have made in that. And then finally, we've talked over the last year about enhancing the ALC, the St. Croix Area Learning Center, and giving more increased access to our students. If you look at that space over at the high school, you'll see that they have a space right by the Wellness Center, so they have full access to chemical, mental health, and counselor services. We also held a ribbon cutting ceremony for our newest elementary school on Tuesday with approximately 300 families and community members from the area that were surrounding Brookview. And you see a picture here of our board and some of the students that attended that evening. We'd like to thank Commissioner Lisa Wyke, the board members and staff for participating and welcoming our students and families so well that evening. I also had the opportunity to visit with the Stillwater Area Retired Educators Association this week to share ideas with them about the transition updates for our buildings and our programs. We'll be partnering with the association to create a web page to help connect our retirees who would like to be more involved in our schools. It's wonderful to hear their stories of growth and change in the district over the years. Many of them were sharing back when technology was still a ditto machine and you had to make multiple copies. They were happy to see that we'd moved on, and so am I. We anticipated having more information for the board regarding the bus terminal property. We were hoping to have information this evening about those parcels, and we're waiting for more information. We did today just receive the environmental report, which we'll be sharing with the board and coming back bringing it as a topic in the near future. You also might have noticed that we're moving the superintendent's meeting report to the beginning of our meeting, and that's so that we can address some of the issues from the open forum. In the past, sometimes I've tried to address those, and folks who had the concerns were already gone, so we're hoping that by doing that, we can address issues more quickly. Last week, during the open forum, the board heard from two speakers. The first was a comment to the board and didn't require a response from the administration. The second was a question about the length of time it takes for FOIA or Freedom of Information Act requests. We thought it was important for you to share that some of the requests for our documents can be turned around very quickly, sometimes even within a day. Other requests may contain private or confidential data, and it requires layers of retrieval and review that really can slow down the process. Given the volumes of requests that we continue to receive related to our pending litigation, it sometimes takes longer than we'd like. These requests require review by our attorneys. The review process tends to slow us down. The district's very aware of our responsibility of the requirement that we provide information in response to FOIA, and we take it very seriously. We'll continue to work to provide information as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Introductory items, we have the student report, and since this is the first evening that our students are here, I'll ask you to introduce yourselves once again to the board and the community before you give your reports.
Okay, I'm Avi Okanovich, and this week has been homecoming week at the high school, and it's off to a really good start. So the Spirit Days are super important for school community, I think. And so Monday we had Comfy Day, Tuesday was Jersey Day, Wednesday was Activities Day, so kids were encouraged to wear apparel from their activity or sport that they participate in. Today was Patriotic Day, and we had a great turnout. And then tomorrow will be Pony Pride. And I've noticed a lot of freshmen participating, which was surprising to me, and it's really nice to see. But yeah, the freshmen are great with it. And so tomorrow is Homecoming Day, and selected leaders are going to be visiting the elementary and middle schools in the morning. And then there'll be a Pep Fest going on after the classes end. And during the Pep Fest, Homecoming King and Queen will be announced. The Croydale Homecoming King and Queen will be announced or recognized. The super fans of our school will be telling the student body about the halftime stunt. And the Chevelles and the cheerleaders will both be performing. So that'll be exciting. And then all of those kids are going to be released to the carnival, which I know a lot of work has been put into, so that'll be super fun. And I know a lot of kids are super excited about that. And then after that is obviously the big game, so that's super exciting. And then looking into next week, the Academic Lettering Award Ceremony will be on Monday the 18th, 7 p.m. And then just looking back on this week, the Powder Puff game, which is the girls' football game, had a great turnout. There were approximately 70 girls, juniors and seniors. The juniors won 8-6. And looking into the sports, the boys' varsity soccer team has an away game against Southwest Minneapolis on Saturday. And this week on Tuesday, they won against Cretin 3-2. And then there will be tennis matches and cross-country meets throughout the afternoon on Tuesday, the 19th.
Thank you.
I'm Annabelle Gregg, and I'm a senior at Stillwater as well, and Ava and I are the student council presidents. Today I'll be highlighting some academic notes and things regarding to our first couple weeks of school. So our school year has entered its full swing. Link crew and upperclassmen have been working really hard to welcome our underclassmen students to the school. The expansion done to the building has left students and staff a little unsure of what direction they're going, but as the school year pushes forward, hopefully we'll have that figured out. The middle schools have worked to welcome their new students as well. They've been using a program called WEB, which stands for Where Everyone Belongs. And across the district, there was lots of enthusiasm and kindness seen in welcoming students back to their schools, which is always great to see. National Honor Society will be hosting a blood drive on September 22nd, which is open to students and staff at SAHS. In light of Hurricane Harvey and Irma, they're hoping for an especially great turnout. In regards to our academics, the opening week of introductions and syllabi has passed, and courses are welcoming the rigor. AP Calc students completed Chapter 1, where they explored what turned out to be the limitless world of limits. AP Environmental students are conducting a population count of small mammals in the ELC while also hatching quail. STEM science freshmen are starting to work on their science projects. Lifetime and fitness gym students are trying their hand at Ultimate Frisbee next week, and marketing students began the stock market game today. In addition, the Stillwater Area High School Music Department will host a rummage sale on Saturday the 23rd from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. All proceeds go to benefit our spectacular music program. If you feel like helping out, go ahead and drop a donation off from 1 to 5 this Sunday. Our musical theater department is starting to work on the production of Grease. The dates for that is October 10th through 13th, and then the 26th through 28th of October as well. We look forward to the big game on Friday, and we hope everyone enjoys the homecoming weekend.
Thanks for that, and welcome. As you have comments about stuff that we're discussing, feel free to raise your hand, get our attention, and share your opinions. Our next item is a district recognition, and I'll turn that to the superintendent.
Thank you. This evening, we'd like to thank our community organizations and volunteers who help support the district. And Chris Keister, our communications engagement manager, is going to introduce our guests this evening. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Board Chair Hepner, Superintendent Pontrelli, and members of the board. As you know, we have an incredible community, and this year is not an exception. Our Stuff the Bus campaign, which gets donated supplies for our kids, surpassed all of our expectations. We collected about $6,000 in donations and in-kind donations last year, had a goal of about $7,000 for this year, and actually raised more than $11,500 in cash and in-kind donations. So this is amazing. I've had a chance to talk to some of the families who received these donations. I've seen the kids as they're opening up their backpacks and looking at what's inside, and they're just so excited and grateful for these gifts. But none of this would be possible without our community partners. Community Thread and United Way of Washington County East do all of the behind-the-scenes work to go out into the public and ask for these donations, to collect them, to organize them, to get them all ready to go out into the schools. And so tonight I'm pleased to introduce Sally Anderson of Community Thread and Lois Raboyan from United Way. We just want to publicly thank them, so I have a certificate for each of them, and then invite them to say a few words if they're willing as well. So, Lois, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, quickly, on behalf of the United Way, we couldn't do this without the school district's support, and the teachers were very generous, but next year, $15,000.
We're very pleased at Community Thread to partner with United Way. It really does take a village to help out in our community here, and we're just so grateful for the generous donors that made it possible. And then, of course, for the volunteers who came in and helped sort the materials, and the school advocates who get it out to the kids and really help support the families. And we strongly believe that kids who get off to a good start with the school year become good citizens, become good volunteers, and it really strengthens the community, which is what we're about at Community Thread as well. So really happy to be partnering with the school district to make this happen again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is open forum, and as usual, I'll read our prologue before we call our speakers. Stillwater Area School District welcomes input from citizens as community involvement fosters better decision-making and improved learning experiences for all students. While comments and questions are welcome during open forum, law prohibits the board from discussing concerns about individual employees or students in a public meeting. We will stop the proceedings immediately if employee or student privacy issues are raised and direct the speaker to forward comments regarding individual employees or students to the superintendent. Because we are modeling civil discourse for our community, speakers must present their testimony in a respectful manner. Vulgarity, character attacks, malice, or specific complaints identifying staff or students by name or implication will not be permitted. The board will not deliberate, discuss, or engage in conversation with speakers during open forum. However, the board may ask administration to review the concerns presented. And with that, our first speaker this evening is Tina Riley.
Tina Riley, Stillwater. At the August 10th board meeting, there was discussion around purchasing a parcel of land for the amount of $6.85 million, almost double the voter-approved bond amount. Because prior discussion of this parcel was closed, the public at large was not privy to any of the details or information. The meeting materials were not uploaded within a reasonable amount of time prior to the meeting, and documents were not available for the public to be able to follow along. The dollar amount was not disclosed in the action that the board was asked, only the phrase, "the purchase price has met board parameters," from closed session. It wasn't until another board member questioned the cost value did I become aware. This is not transparency. As the meeting proceeded, Chair Hepner, you presented information from a 22-year-old study which Vice Chair O'Laughlin continually supported, a study that was from 1995. Pieces from that study were cherry-picked to give the worst possible impression of the current property the district is leasing for busing. Minnesota Central is not owned by District 834. To give the impression that the taxpayers are putting people in harm's way is intellectually dishonest. Chair Hepner, you asked for an immediate vote, even though board members wanted a delay. To intentionally give alarming information for the purpose of swaying a decision is unethical. In fact, 2 weeks prior, I sat in on a retreat with you. I remember you being asked to let board members have the time they need to make an educated decision, and you having a greater obligation because you are board chair. On August 10th, you demanded an immediate vote based on a 22-year-old outdated report to purchase a parcel that was almost double what the community approved. Vice Chair O'Laughlin, you paired with Chair Hebner in fear-mongering. Your highest priority was an alleged health risk to non-district employees, repeatedly stating the board has a moral and ethical obligation to prioritize jeopardizing people's health, no matter how small, which you cannot put a price tag on or quantify in a financial sense. The board job description in the board handbook responsibilities include economic responsibility of prudent management of public resources, and also moral and ethical responsibility to function impartially to ensure the greatest good to the greatest number at all times. When did you receive the 2007 report that was referenced during the board meeting saying the property was remediated? You all had this information prior and neglected to share it publicly. You intentionally defamed the leased property and tried to expedite a vote using fear while deceiving the community. When community members repeatedly asked Director Pelletier and Chair Hebner for any documentation regarding the current leased property, the 2007 report was omitted from the response. BGP 3.5.6 states board members shall exercise honesty in all written and interpersonal interactions. The district is trying to move along and continue business. The continued assault on trust and transparency stop any progression. BGP 4.2.2 states build and practice trust. From MSBA, according to Minnesota law, the care, management, and control of independent districts shall be vested in a board of directors to be known as the school board. There are certain implications in being responsible for the entire district which you may want to consider. Decisions need to reflect what is in the best interest of all students and all citizens. This demands a constant effort and strong commitment to serve taxpayers. Chair Hebner and Vice Chair O'Laughlin, you have demonstrated you are not good stewards of our tax dollars and cannot be trusted. Vice Chair O'Laughlin, you admitted the board does not enforce policies, as spoken by Mary Sacconi at one of your latest work sessions. Governing through policy is crucial to success. BGP 1.1, the board holds itself accountable to the citizens of the district by ensuring that all actions it takes are consistent with law and board policy. Tonight, I ask you, Chair Hebner, and you, Vice Chair O'Laughlin, for your resignations. Supported by members of this community, if you decline to do so, I demand the board take action of their own according to statute 123B.09 subdivision 9. I have attached a list of taxpayers that stand with me in this request. I did not go public until this moment. Therefore, it only represents a small sampling. The violations of policies and unethical behavior should stand on its own. And I do have copies for everybody if you are interested.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Our second speaker is Christy Mack.
Can you give those?
Good evening. I'm Christy Mack. I live at 421 West Pine Street in Stillwater. I'm here tonight to discuss concerns I have for the GATE program, of which my daughter's in her second year. To be honest, I wasn't happy that GATE moved to the middle school for a variety of reasons, but my daughter is so enthralled with the program and her teachers that we decided she would continue to attend. That being said, I have no concerns about the teaching staff, who are extremely dedicated and caring individuals. My concerns are not in respect to the curriculum, because they've got that covered. My concern is the balancing of educational needs versus social and emotional needs. When GATE was located at Oak Park Elementary, it was fantastic for GATE students because they were still in a school with their peers and had opportunity to participate in activities with the whole school community. Student council assemblies in the gym to celebrate reaching a goal such as pennies for patients, lunch and recess, passing friends from different classes in the halls, and school plays are just a few examples. So although they were separated from their peers in one sense, they were still very much a part of the whole school community with their peers. I fear that although GATE has its own wing in the middle school in order to try to preserve the fact that these are still elementary school children, they have been further isolated. If GATE is going to work at the middle school, there needs to be a constant watch kept on what's best for these kids as elementary students, and the program needs to grow. I want to know why third graders aren't a part of the program for this year as originally planned, and are there plans to bring them into the program in the near future? The needs of these students also must be thoughtfully planned out. For example, the 5th grade GATE students have been separated between boys and girls and placed in with the middle schoolers for PE. This is not an elementary school experience. PE is very different for middle schoolers than it is for elementary schoolers. From what I understand, this isn't because this is what's best for these kids, but because the numbers don't work and we are short teaching staff. Although the staff have been fantastic in answering my questions about PE and how it's going to work this year, I think this is an issue that needs to be resolved by the administration. On another note, we have no playground. This has been extremely frustrating to me. These kids are kids who still need to play, and I've come to understand that the playground at Withrow Elementary was auctioned off to Forest Lake Schools. This playground was paid for. And I do know the PTO paid for it, and it was donated to the school, thus the reason why you were able to auction it off. I want to know, we could use that playground in our schools here, and so I'm not understanding the problem with why it couldn't be located or relocated at the middle school, especially because of the fact that the bus terminal that we're talking about spending double the amount that was allotted for in the bond. And Chair Hepner, at the last meeting, you said you think we can afford that. So I don't think it's a problem with money. I'm requesting that a board liaison be assigned to the GATE program to help its growth and for the thoughtful planning for all the students in it. And lastly, I need to clear up some misunderstandings regarding the town hall meeting that was held on July 25th. I put on that town hall meeting along with my friend Jennifer Bai as concerned citizens, parents, and taxpayers to inform others on a variety of topics regarding District 834. I understand it's been said that 834 Voice put on that event. They did not. The town hall event was a great way to get information out to the community and allowed for open dialogue between speakers and attendees. It was a public event held in a public space, posted publicly. It was not a secret meeting held in someone's basement via invitation only. As you may recall, during the June 7th open forum, I asked that you, the board, put on an event like this. You didn't, so the community did. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can just kind of restate what your questions, you're interested in getting a response to why third graders aren't part of GATE. You're interested in learning what the future would be for PE for the GATE students, and you're interested in the board considering a liaison for the GATE program. Am I correct there?
Yes,
Okay.
and also playground issues with GATE at the middle school.
So that's separate from the PE
Yes.
issue. Okay.
Could I interject for a second? You mentioned
Yes.
So I felt in that presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So what's the
Well,
question?
I just feel she mentioned that she feels the kids that they're a little bit too isolated. I had that written down. That struck me, and I have a GATE child too. So I just wanted to interject, make sure that you got that in there also.
Thank you. Next speaker is Dr. Janella Struble-Jamelka. I'm sorry, I screwed it up.
Hey, it's not the easiest name in the world.
Well, first of all, I really want to thank you in two ways. I spent a lot of time this summer visiting schools across the country. As Superintendent Pontrelli knows, education is my life. I have a PhD in educational administration, policy analysis, and a PhD in counseling psychology, so children are my life. And the second is for the board who put faith in Superintendent Pontrelli to make some very, very, very difficult decisions. And I am both a parent and I'm an educator and advocate for children. And when you look across the country, We have a top-notch school district, and the decisions that were not made lightly. And we can't all have everything that we want. So I just want to thank you. And Denise, I sent you a long email about how much I really appreciate the work that you do. So as I said, I'm here wearing two hats. My first and second hats are really difficult to separate. I am a parent. In fact, I am one of the few parents, African-American parents, in where we go to school. My kids go to school at Anderson Elementary. We do live in Oak Park Heights. When my children were getting to the point to go to elementary school, I went to every single elementary school, public and private, met with the assistant principal and the teachers of kindergarten and first grade, and chose Anderson. And I stick with Anderson. However, we're in our third week of school, our first full week of school, and school is starting to happen. And there are a few issues that I'm here to present that we simply need to figure out a way to address. And Denise and Superintendent Pontrelli and Eric Anderson, we worked on some of this and had discussions, but now they're playing themselves out. They're no longer hypothetical. So the overall theme is around equity, diversity, and cultural competence. And there's 5 major issues that are playing themselves out in real life. One is policy. We do not have a policy that connects hate crime and bullying. We have a very clear policy on bullying. We have that's in our district handbook, which only I'm sure me and a few other people have read page by page, and in our parent handbook, very clear. We have had this week alone, and it's Thursday, I believe, I have had over 27 emails from new parents to Anderson who are parents of children of color, who know me, I don't know them. I even had an interaction in Walgreens where they're saying their children don't want to go to school because the children are mean, and so on and so forth. And there was an incident where my son was bullied. And so, the principal and I had a conversation, and simply the policy is incongruent. We need a way to disseminate and discuss the information. Bayport is, as well as Stillwater, is not known for being very diverse, and honestly, there are some very, very racially intimidating things that happen that you could never imagine. But I've lived here for over a decade. We need to integrate our policies in all aspects, not just have a policy on social or cultural diversity and a policy on hazing or what have you, but integrate those and teach our staff what to do. What I got from the incident from my son being bullied was a nasty letter from his teacher saying that he was a bully, when it turns out that he followed all aspects, called for help, no one helped, and he was mob attacked. My son is 8. The last one is that many districts have cultural liaisons that serve in a purpose much like our student advocates, but they're much more advanced, that they're able to work with faculty and staff around cultural competence. They're able to work with policy. They're able to do those sorts of things. And I think as we sit around the table and really digest this, we have an opportunity, because it is the end of our bridge success, and we'd like to be solutions and not problems. So thank you.
Thank you. So if I can just try to synthesize what you mentioned there, you would like us to look again at our policies related to bullying, hate crimes, cultural competence, and try to integrate the policy and then work with teachers and staffs to make sure that they're aware of the policies and they act according to them?
Well, yes and no. So the only hate crime policy that this district has is from 1982, and it follows federal guidelines. It was updated in 1985 and revised in 1989. It has not been touched again. It took me 2 hours to find that. So that's an issue. So that's the first thing, is we need to have a district policy that's updated, that even follows state regulations, city regulations, and federal regulations. It does not. At this point, we are not in compliance with federal law in terms of hate crimes. So that's one issue. The second is then to integrate that. It will stand alone, obviously, just like our IEPs and our 504s. Sure. But it should be integrated into bullying. I mean, children should not be mob crimed because they're the only brown child out at recess. And my son is not very brown. And so that's several issues, and that in and of itself is a big piece. We're not in compliance as a school district.
Okay, and did you check our discipline policy? Is that where I remember?
So I have the parent handbook that went out. There is a very clear bullying policy. I went to several schools today. It was a very busy day. Not a single parent handbook had anything about transitions of more diverse schools, anything like that. So it was an opportunity lost when we had these parent meetings that they could have begun to talk about, how do you work with somebody that's a different color? We lost that because we have nothing. I mean, this is the same handbook that I've gotten every year for the last 5 years. And so Anderson went from 98%, roughly 98% Caucasian students, still 100% Caucasian staff and faculty, to about 75%. So it increased to 25% students of colors, English language learners, so on and so forth. And we're not ready. But school's here, and these children are here, and school phobia is ugly. So that's just one thing, is the policy is one thing. The second thing would be around developing a strategic plan that then addresses how do we integrate this into every aspect of our district, from sports to teaching to everything.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Our fourth speaker, Sandy Hayner.
Hello there, Sandy Hayner, Stillwater, Minnesota. A woman recently asked me, "You don't even have kids in the district schools. Why are you so involved with all that is going on?" I thought that was a very interesting question. My response is, you do have children in the schools. Why aren't you? But I guess if that's a real question, I'll answer. Wrong is wrong. I'm a taxpayer, a mother, a friend, a family member, educator, community member, and just a general concerned human being. It is my understanding that any one of those would qualify me to care about standing up to injustice. But what do I know? I did not know that there was also a religious stipulation. Let me explain. Recently, at a session with your newest consultant, Mary Ciccone, Vice Chair Paula O'Loughlin was scolding Ms. Stivland for attending the recent community-led town hall meeting. She falsely stated that the town hall was created by 834 Voice, the entity suing the district for violation of open meeting laws and conflict of interest issues. This untruth was repeated as though it was some sort of leverage to stifle Ms. Stivland's First Amendment rights and compassion for community engagement. Myself and members of the audience spoke up to clarify that the town hall meeting was not an 834 Voice event. The consultant, hired to coach the board on community engagement, shushed us and allowed the false narrative to live on. Interesting. I approached Vice Chair Paula after the meeting to clarify the situation. First, she told me that I should set up a meeting with her for another day. I agreed, but I just wanted to at least clear up the town hall thing. She continued to affirm that her belief and her secondhand information was more valid than what I was telling her as one of the town hall presenters. She was not open to the truth, but rather preferred her own version of the story and justified grudge against Mrs. Stivland. And then things took an odd and unexpected turn. Paula, the vice chair, began a lengthy explanation in which she shared that she is a religious person and does her best to do what her God tells her to do. She went on to say that her moral and ethical compass are what drives her decisions, and if she's wrong, well, she'll just deal with that at the pearly gates. She explained that people have said mean things she doesn't like, and she considers that to be very unchristian-like. She explained that she does not surround herself nor spend time with those who, in her opinion, act unchristian-like, and that is why she didn't attend the town hall meeting. I asked if she considered myself and the speakers to be unchristian-like. Are all the people who support 834 Voice also unchristian-like? She told me to stop putting words in her mouth and then said that she had to leave. I shared that while I support people creating personal boundaries, and I do so myself, her job as a board member is clearly impacted by this sweeping generalization and personal standpoint of hers. How can she represent a community she looks down upon? Who made her the moral and ethical, much less Christian authority of worthiness? I mentioned that little thing about the separation of church and state. I asked if she could see how this prevents her from doing the job we pay her to do. I asked if she understood that, and that she had applied and campaigned for a job in public office in which she makes public decisions, using public money, but somehow wants to remain immune from public opinion. I asked if she could understand that perspective. She answered, nope. That doesn't make any sense. She didn't know what I was getting at and abruptly began to walk away, saying she had to get home. I responded, that's fine. I'll email like she suggested and we can set something up. Hurrying away, she said, great. I emailed the next day and she responded that she decided the meeting with me would be unproductive, even though I hadn't even told her what I wanted to discuss. I replied that she and I have common ground and that I'd like to expand on that. And she then not only included Board Chair Hepner and Superintendent Petrelli on the email thread, but also said that I should take my questions about her to George, that he was the best person for the job. Chair Hepner never responded to any of the emails, 8 in total. I asked if she was abdicating her board role to Chair Hepner, and she ended the correspondence. Last week, after another meeting, I attempted to speak with her, and she refused to stop walking, much less even look at me. I reminded her of the email she never responded to, and you said you'd look for it, and I still haven't heard from you. This is just one example of what many others have experienced with certain members of this board. This is what it's like to try to collaborate, share ideas, thoughts, ask questions, clear inaccuracies, etc. One might start to wonder if the narratives the board and admin hold on to so tightly might start to unravel if they found out that the community is not actually a group of Satanists or hate-filled evildoers, but actually very thoughtful, smart, invested, committed individuals perfectly capable of working with those who they may disagree with. What if we'd met and she realized we have common ground and concerns? What if she learned I'm unequivocally not anti-education nor driven by hate? What if I became a human being with whom she could identify? What would that do to her closely held victim status and narrative? Every self-claimed good guy needs a bad guy or they lose their pedestal they've placed themselves upon. What if we're not actually the bad guys? I guess that's a risk you weren't willing to take, huh? This is why people are frustrated. Bold is just the beginning, and it's definitely true. Bold has people paying attention, and this is what we're seeing. So my question to you, Board Chair Hepner, will you please explain how this behavior and response from your board vice chair is not in violation of your own board policies? Do you condone this type of self-righteousness and discrimination of those in the community who do not align with a board member's personal religious beliefs? Thanks.
Thank you.
Chair Hepner?
Yes.
May I respond since my name was...
Go right ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Hayner, for being here tonight and for sharing your
Sure,
thoughts
anytime,
and perspectives. And I just want to let you know that I see you and I hear you. I hear your frustration and the frustration and maybe even hurt that I'm hearing. So I'm always willing to meet with any community member.
Except me.
And I'm sorry. I'm still speaking. I'm more than happy to sit down and meet with any community member, and when that conversation is rooted in respect and civility and kindness and honesty, I think that's when together we can work together to find solutions and identify solutions that are going to move this district forward for each and every child. And so when those values are present, I'm always happy to meet.
So which policy gives you the right to make those stipulations?
Thank you for being here.
So that's another question. Which policy allows her to make
Thanks for your comment.
which community members she will engage? So that's a question.
Thanks for your, fine, and I've got
Write it
that down.
Thanks.
I will, thank you. Consent agenda this evening, minutes of the August 10th, 2017 school board meeting. Minutes of the August 10th, 2017 closed session. Minutes of the August 23rd, 2017 closed session. Disbursement register, August 4th through September 6th, 2017. The Human Resources Personnel Report, the Uniform Grant Guidance Update, and a field trip for the Stillwater Choir Spring Concert Tour, 1 advisor, 10 chaperones, 82 students to travel to New York City, April 18th through the 22nd, 2018. Before I ask for a motion to accept that, I will recuse myself because of a conflict with the Human Resources.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
And oppose? Thank you. And we have two reports this evening. The first is the thought exchange. Ms. Keister.
Well, hello again, Board Chair Hefner, members of the board, and Superintendent Pontrelli. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to share a little bit about Thought Exchange. As you remember, we have done a couple of Thought Exchange processes now. The first one was last fall, and then we did one this past spring as well. And this is a way for us to engage with the community to find out kind of what they're thinking and what are the issues on some specific topics. Those of you who have been involved in the Bridge to Excellence planning process, it might be hard to believe that it's been 5 years now since that work was started. That means that it is time for us to start thinking about what our next strategic plan is going to look like. And our thought exchange process this past May was really designed to help get us some of that feedback from our community as we start to think of priorities for the coming strategic plan. The heart of that work really is a question of what do we want for our students. And so that is what our thought exchange process asked in May was really what does our community want? What are the skills and attributes that our students need in order to be successful? And what priorities do we need to have as we look at our next strategic plan? So as you can see on the slide before you, about 1,700 people participated in this thought exchange. The numbers were down slightly from our fall numbers, and I don't have any scientific reason why, but I really truly believe it comes down to, we asked this in May, end of the school year, everybody was focused on just getting through testing and getting through all of those last minute things. So I think that's probably why participation was down a little bit, but we still had 3,500 thoughts that were shared, and you can see more than 133,000 stars were assigned through this process. So we did have a lot of good conversation and good information was gathered. We asked our community 3 different questions, and you can see the question on the left and then some of the top thoughts that came out on the right. Question 1 asked people what they would like students to experience in schools that they currently cannot. And the majority of the thoughts were around life skills. And when you looked into this a little bit deeper into the comments, it was about things like balancing a checkbook and being able to create and maintain a budget. Understanding how mortgages work and how you can invest to save for retirement. Some of those basic financial literacy skills were really important and came up time and time again. Under curriculum and programming, people talked about what they want for their students as far as not being able to have enough elective courses at the high school. We've heard that before, that we just have kind of a limited schedule for our kids and that we want more of that so our kids can be well-rounded. There were also a lot of comments about world languages starting at younger ages for our students and having more variety of world language opportunities. Class size shouldn't surprise you. You heard that a lot in our first thought exchange process as well. Class size came up again in all 3 of the questions we asked. Most of the time it was referring just to the idea of elementary school, especially where they want their students to be able to form those relationships with teachers and for teachers to be able to personalize and differentiate learning. Vocational and experiential learning, this was really getting into things like home economics classes, shop classes, some of those things that we've seen in the past that maybe we aren't offering anymore. They also talked a lot about real-world experiences and having opportunities for kids who might not be college-bound. And as we dug deeper into that 5th one about instruction, there were a lot of comments about standardization, standardized testing, kind of that cookie-cutter approach to education that people have concerns about. There were also comments about reducing homework and about giving kids time to explore their interests. Question 2 asked what are some of the important skills or attributes that a graduate must have to be successful. These are pretty self-explanatory when you look at critical thinking, written and verbal communication, work ethic, creative thinking and problem solving, collaboration, and just being part of a team, being able to be a team player. So I don't have to give you too much more information. I think you can understand what they were getting at with those comments. Question 3 was, what do you think is most important for the district to focus on in the next 3 to 5 years? This is where class size came in at the top. Differentiation was the second one. People really wanted kids to be able to learn at their own level, to have opportunities for that academic middle. And again, some comments about kids. Not everyone goes to college, so we need to make sure that we have opportunities for kids at all levels. I don't think this comes as a surprise to you. And number 3, people love their teachers. So there are a lot of supportive comments about our teachers, being able to support them with professional development activities. There were comments about just making sure that we're paying them well and giving them the support that they need in the classroom. was also about having the support positions in place so that classroom teachers have counselors and paraprofessionals and all of those others there to help support students. Mental health should not be a surprise to us as well. We've had a lot of conversation about mental health. So under that number 4, health and wellness, that was the largest part of the conversation, was about, again, having people in place to help our students as they're dealing with mental health issues, to be able to provide more social and emotional curriculum and support for our kids. There was also conversation about making sure we have healthy food options for our kids and providing more physical education time. The last piece came again to professional development for our staff, giving staff more time to work together, to collaborate, and providing opportunities to really empower teachers and allow them to be more involved in decision making. So this is a really high-level view. I did share this information with the board earlier this summer. There's a website that is live that people can go into, and you can actually dig down and read all of the individual comments and see the stars that were assigned. That's at stillwater.k12.mn.thoughtexchange.com. So I invite all of the public to go to that site and dig deeper. You can see it by school. You can see it district-wide. You can dig into the individual questions. As you know, we have made this part of a bigger discussion too. We've had a lot of think tanks that have taken place this past year where we've invited community experts and business leaders to come in and talk to us about these same sorts of things. What, from a business perspective, do they want to see from graduates as they come into the workforce? A lot of the same feedback has been given to us by our business professionals, and we've gathered all of that. We have a document that has all of that feedback as well as Thought Exchange. All of these different pieces of information are going to help us as we move forward with our strategic planning process. You've seen that. It is available on our website so people can dig in and read about think tanks as well as Thought Exchange. We're going to have some community conversations yet this year where we invite people to come in and talk about these topics as well. And all of this will help us to define the portrait of a graduate, which you've heard a little bit about, and the community will be hearing a lot more about. It's really that idea of what do our kids need in order to succeed. And the reason we call it portrait is because we know that everybody's portrait is a little bit different. We can all be sitting in the same location, kind of posed in the same way, but it's going to look very different for each person. And that's why we've been using that word portrait instead of profile. So with that, this is a quick overview. I invite you to dig deeper into these results, and I will open it up to any questions.
Tom?
We talked, and I think you mentioned the strategic plan process. Are we going to find out what that process is, and do we have a time frame now going forward? I don't know if this is for you or Denise. The reason I bring it up is I was involved with the last strategic plan, and I think it was a formalized. Actually, I think Ray Queener was trained in it. I think maybe
so was I.
So are you. And are we going to discuss? Is that the focus, or is that how we're going? Or I guess we're starting to throw the strategic plan out there, and I think it's important that we get the community understanding what the process may be going forward.
I'll turn that one over to Denise.
Right. In one of our past packets, we had a layout and a timeline for our strategic planning process, and we backed that up a little bit because of some of the other board development work we're doing. So when you determine we're ready and we can have the conversation and have the time to be able to do that, we're ready. Again, I think as Chris had mentioned earlier, we want to have community feedback about what that might look like. The portrait of a graduate really is developed by the community and the staff for Stillwater kids, so we can revisit that as a board and have you take a look at that.
Yeah.
Mike?
And I echo Tom's same request because I think it came up last time with our last strategic plan. And in particular, I think we want to know what's the role of the board. What's it going to be? Now, perhaps we're going to define that in our governance, working with Mary Saccone, or maybe that's going to be here, but I'm just saying I like what you're doing. I like the fact that you're getting information from people, but I also think that process and how it's going to work is pretty important.
Right, so I would encourage, and I can have Barb, we'll go back and look at the format, the draft that we gave you. We did ask for feedback on that, and so we'd appreciate if you want to send, or talk to me or give some feedback on what that looks like. I haven't received that from any of you yet, so if there's something that you would like to add or take away from that, then we can go ahead. We are ready to go. We would like to get started.
Annabelle.
I was just wondering if you have a number on how many students gave their input on what they thought our school should be like, or were those just adults and community members?
We did invite students to participate. Student numbers were lower. We had 8 students. 8 students participated. So we have had conversation, though, with the high school this fall about trying to do something like this intentionally as part of classes so that more kids will take part. So maybe in one of the social studies classes, give kids 15 minutes to take part in this activity. When we just sent it out to kind of people at large, I don't think the students really took it seriously or were interested in doing it. But if we make it part of an actual activity at the high school, we expect we'd get some good feedback. And I think that's a great point because especially for this conversation, student voice is so important.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Jennifer?
So I just want to make sure that I have this correct, that that this work, which is great, and I'm so thankful that we're reaching out and getting this information from the community. But I just want to make sure in my mind that the response from the public is going to specifically go into kind of our work with regards to the profile of a graduate, and then how are we in turn going to go back to the public and maybe say, here's what you said, here's where we're at, here's where we're going. I think that has been a disconnect over the past decades. I don't know, but I feel like we just need to, bridge all those gaps a little bit better. So I've said this a million times, but I guess I just want to hear it again, that this work will directly parlay into profile and the bridge to excellence, and also will reciprocate that and communicate back with the public based on these specific answers?
I think that's a really important question, and you're right, that has not always been the best feedback loop in letting people know how their information is being used. I think that's part of the intent tonight, is to be able to share with you and publicly the information. We've done a lot of work already internally looking at this, and we will continue to do that as we go out into our schools. With school started now, last fall with the results, we actually sat down with our learning leader groups. So each school has a team of people that come together monthly. They sat down with these websites and they dug into the feedback from that first round, and it was actually used as they started doing site improvement plans last year. So that similar process will probably be taking place here in the next couple of months as our staff come back and start thinking about what they're going to be doing for the next year, and especially as we look at strategic planning. As we've talked about, whatever that process does turn out to look like based on your feedback, whoever that strategic planning committee is, they'll have all of this information and be digging deep into it. A lot of what we learned in this process aligns with what we've heard from our think tanks. I will say that there's really nothing different here, so all these different pieces are showing a pretty clear direction, and I think that makes it easier for the committee too, because there are definitely things that our community is saying we need to have in place, and so that's going to make it more of a focus for us too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second report is a transitions update. Dr. McDowell.
Chair Hebner, School Board, Superintendent Pontrelli. I'm here tonight to give you a brief update on transitions in general. It's been a whirlwind of last 18, 24 months just trying to get ready for all of the activities that started at the beginning of this school year. So part of this, I think you'll find, as I'm listening to the questions, you'll find with Thought Exchange, some of the things that I'll share with you tonight briefly really start to relate to some of the stuff that's in Thought Exchange, and I think intentionally and unintentionally there's some alignment already beginning to happen. So the first thing I want to talk about tonight is just our new spaces, new opportunities. I'll start with the high school. A reminder, we have additional classrooms for 9th grade that were added, a big part of the construction project up there. We've remodeled our science classrooms. In addition to that, we've done some upgrades in several of the other classrooms as we've made this move as well. An example of that would be our math classrooms and the amount of technology that's gone into those math classrooms so that they're high quality instructional spaces. As is no surprise, we now have additional physical education spaces to include locker rooms and health classrooms along with the PAC Center. And then we have upgrades in the cafeteria and common areas, which if you visited that now during passing time, it's a much different experience for our students than it was a few years ago where we don't have the bottlenecks that we've had in the past. The high school classrooms, just to point out, don't just impact 9th grade, they also impact 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. And of course, I do need to mention the Pony Activity Center, which is a wonderful addition, and it does include more than just gym space. It includes the walking track that you've been made aware of before and been out and toured, many of you, as well as the fitness area. At our middle schools, both middle schools have had HVAC upgrades to them, and we've done updates to the science labs and the special education labs, special education spaces at Oakland Middle School. And then, as you're all aware, GATE has officially moved over to Stillwater Middle School into the area by the auditorium. With regard to facilities at our elementary schools, the pre-K configuration is now in every building. We have 2 sections of pre-K in every building except for Anderson, which has 1. There are HVAC upgrades that were done this past summer to Afton, Lake Elmo, and Lily Lake. And obviously we had the grand opening of Brookview Elementary. We also had some smaller things take place. If you make it over to Stonebridge, you'll notice that their indoor courtyard has been totally redone and is now actually a very updated, usable outdoor learning space for students at Stonebridge Elementary. And then if you just simply drive up to Lily Lake, you'll know that that entire parking lot looks extremely different now, where they have a much safer way to get buses and parents in and out of that space at Lily Lake. With regard to special education, I would point out from a physical facilities standpoint that our medically complex program has moved to Oakland Middle School. We've redesigned and updated our cluster programs at some of our elementary schools to include Rutherford, Lily Lake, and Lake Elmo specifically, and our 18 to 21 transition program has moved to the Oak Park building. The thing about the transition program is that movement in itself allowed us to gain a larger space so that now we can start working on simulated apartments and our work experience programming in a better facility setup than what we had before. The one thing I do want to mention before I move on to some other things is just really giving a gratuitous shout out to our custodians, our food service, our principals, our paraprofessionals, our nurses, any support staff, clerical, everyone. The amount of work that went into transitioning just because of all of the facility changes was astronomical. And it took everybody's help to make sure that we were ready to go for those kiddos. So I think it's really important as we move through the year at every opportunity we get just to thank people for the amount of energy they put in just to get ready for our kids with regard to facilities in particular. One thing I do want to touch on that is impacted with facilities is just the grade configuration and enrollment. Just a reminder to everyone, we've now officially moved all of our 9th grade up to the high school. We've moved all of the 6th grade up to the middle schools. We, again, have preschool in every elementary. And as Denise mentioned earlier, our enrollment is on track with what we were hoping it would be. Right now, as of today, specific to construction, all of the air conditioning with regard to the HVAC that was updated is in place and running, except for at Lake Elmo at this point. They're working on that. And the only other construction items we have right now are the punch lists. So if anyone has ever done any home construction, you know you build your home, and then once it's done, or once you have the upgrades done, you get that punch list of items that need to go back and touch up this, touch up that. And then we're having some issues with some key card readers. But other than that, we're in a great spot with our construction at this point, and for the most part done. With regard to learning opportunities at the elementary level, in addition to having preschool in every elementary school, just a reminder that we're training every elementary teacher in responsive classroom. It's a big push at all the elementary schools. It's providing consistency, things like implementing morning meetings, quiet time, closing meetings, just things that really help our elementary students be in a better place to learn every day. And we're doing that across the district. Our GATE programming, as you know, has moved to Stillwater Middle School. Spanish immersion was pointed out before, but that started at Lake Elmo. Our intervention programming is really taking off. One thing I would point out is that we have our AmeriCorps Promise Fellows. We have 4 at the high school. We have 2 at the middle schools right now. So intervention is just growing and really becoming a part of our everyday operation everywhere. One thing to update you on is our elementary literacy plan, which is at this point a small piloting group involving teachers from all across the district, is well underway to the point where we have teachers implementing some initial phases of a new elementary literacy type curriculum, and they're doing that all year. And then with regard to the delayed start for Ready, Set, Go, we've gotten nothing but positive comments from teachers and families on what a great experience that was to be able to take time, meet with teachers, get a good idea of where our kiddos are at. With regard to middle schools, where everybody belongs, we had a huge orientation. I don't know if you're aware that what that program did for elementary is for middle school, those 8th grade web leaders took 2 days, one day with 6th graders, one day with 7th graders, to get them going in the buildings. Same type of thing happened at the high school with Link Crew. Getting our Link Crew, if you were over there at all in the first couple days of school, you saw the kiddos in green shirts running around, taking small groups all over the place, trying to get kids to know where to go and feel more comfortable at school. With the high school as well, with the freshman academy and keeping the 10th grade academy, we're trying to figure out ways to create smaller learning communities for kids so that a very large high school seems like it's smaller for students. And then, again, nothing but positive comments about the delayed start with 9th and 10th starting, and then the second day bringing 11th and 12th graders. I think that was a really great way to transition that building for both teachers and students. It allowed teachers actually to take small groups of students around the building as well. Some changes for supporting our pony staff. We moved approximately 150 staff this summer. That's moving from one physical plant to another physical plant, depending upon what it was. That doesn't include buildings like Lily Lake, where, as I understand it, every teacher in that building moved from what position from classroom they were teaching in to another classroom. So if you add all that in, we're well over 200 teachers that moved in some way, shape, or form over the summer. We had 15 rounds of postings that started planning back in October of 15. The first posting in January kicked off, again, 15 rounds to get everybody in the right spots and really try to partner with the SCEA and make sure we had people in the right places, what was a best fit for them, and all that goes along with that. And then with regard to professional development, we are continuing to train on responsive classroom, continuing to train for middle school on developmental designs. We will continue Link Crew. We're working really hard to make sure that our World's Best Workforce Plan is linked to our school improvement plans. The directors are working really closely with principals right now to make sure our school improvement plans are really at the heart of what their work is, and it's intentional work, and they know what that is moving forward for their classrooms. I'll end with the fact that we're really focusing on managing class size averages at all levels. I know elementary comes up a lot, but right now, you saw before, elementary across the district is sitting at an average of 24.29, right in that. Secondary core classes right now, social studies and math, are sitting at 29.31 as an average class size. That's including middle schools and high school. English is sitting just above 28 at 28.82. Science is at 27.72. And our world language classes across the secondary are averaging out at 31.32 right now. So we'll continue to monitor those class size averages and specifics that go along with that. But right now we feel like we're in a pretty good spot and have a I would say more importantly, a great handle on what movements are taking place. As you know, at the secondary, as we get through the first month of school, changes happen. Kids change schedules, class sizes fluctuate, and so there's a constant rebalancing as we get through this. I'll just end with the last slide of, we're really about warm welcomes this year. We've really tried to make sure that with Carissa's help, we're continuing to find ways to build community, focus on Pony Pride, engage with residents, really make personal connections, and one of those ways, hopefully it will be tomorrow afternoon as we kick off the first ever homecoming carnival, which will be at Stillwater High School. And with that, I'll end Transition's presentation.
Jen?
Comment first. I just want to thank both of you because you, I think you're doing just a wonderful job in saying doing what you say you're going to do, in really working hard for the community. And I've heard nothing but so many positive comments and excitement about this carnival tomorrow, and I see it rising all the time. And so I just wanted to personally thank you for that. It's really exciting stuff, so thank you. But I just also, it's a very simple question, but you were talking a little bit about something about cluster programming, moving cluster programming. Can you go back to that just for my benefit?
At the elementary level, we have what are called cluster programs. So ASD program is a cluster program. Students would be a part of that program. It's housed in one building. It's not housed across buildings. Okay. Our DCD program is a cluster program. And our medically complex, medically fragile program is a cluster program. So medically fragile complex is at Lake Elmo. So that area had updates done to that wing of the building for those families and for those students. We did change the location, we switched the location of the DCD cluster program and the ASD program between Rutherford and Lily Lake is what we had done. So the DCD program is now housed at Lily Lake and the ASD program is now at Rutherford.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom?
I just have a comment. I want to echo too, because I've heard a lot from staff that, this has been hard. Moving is not easy, but I think from everyone on down, they've appreciated the transparency with regards to letting them know, giving them enough time to get this all done. And I think for the community, I think it's important that as you've tabled, or as you set this out, this is an update. This is going to be an ongoing process. We're going to get updates throughout the year so that this wasn't just a one and done. We've moved and now we're not going to follow through on a lot of this stuff because transition is hard for anybody, and I think we're doing it the right way, and we've spent I think the appropriate amount of money on this because this is important. We've set a new transition going forward for all of our buildings, and it's only going to benefit our kids.
Shelley?
Just one question, which you may or may not have the answer, but at some point I would like to see, you shared the average class sizes, but if we could see the range at some point to see if we have bubbles. I know you were looking at maybe foreign language and just to see if there's bubbles in that.
And so at the secondary level, that's what I'm working on with the building principals right now is exactly that. It's figuring out where our bubbles, it'll be interesting now in the next week and a half probably just to see where kids land and so we can get a good read on where's an outlier class because particularly on the extremes of those, depending upon, as I've explained a little bit before, the ranges can happen due to a variety of things in the secondary buildings that don't happen at elementary, but we can absolutely, that's what we're working on right now is to figure out how to quantify that data in a way that's easy to look at and make sense.
Okay, thank you.
Paula?
Just one comment, one question. I received a few phone calls, just parents inquiring about class size at the elementary level. So I just wanted to share with those that also might have the same question that the ranges, I understand, all the class sizes are within the range. And I think one of the conversations I remember having with a parent was that The class size issue really is set forth by the board in terms of the actual parameters and what those ranges are. So I just wanted to make sure that, because sometimes I think there can be some conflation of people saying, oh, look at the class sizes, but really those have been established by the board, and that if that's a conversation that the board wishes to have, that's how we can change the range. But all the class at the elementary level, they all do fall in that the board approved parameter range.
Correct.
So that's what I just wanted to clarify on that. And then my question was just about Lake Elmo. So you said that AC was it that was still?
Right now, specifics about that, I would have to defer. But right now, Lake Elmo is the building where the AC is not yet hooked up.
Okay.
They're right there. That's just not ready to flip the switch yet.
Right. And of course, this week being one of the hotter weeks in September, right? But
yep.
Okay.
So,
okay. All right. Will you keep us updated on that,
absolutely,
please? Okay,
we can keep you
thank you.
updated.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
We have one action item this evening, the Schools for Equity in Education membership. And I'll turn that over to Mike.
Chair Hepner, is it okay if I go down up front? I think it's easier.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Chair Hepner and the board for allowing me to come forward and speak about C. My goal tonight will be to give you a better idea of what C is. So for the last couple of weeks, what I've done is I've put together a number of materials that I think would increase your understanding. And obviously, as we go along or at the end or whenever, if you have questions, stop me, and I'll try to give you a response. So first of all, what I'd like to say is what C is, and realize that Stillwater was a member of C from 1995-96 school year up into 2014-15. So for 2 years, we have not been a member, and for approximately 10 years before that, we were a member. What C stands for is these are Schools for Equity in Education. And what I want to do for you is to define what equity in the way they use it, what it means. And what the term equity means there is in a school district representation. And what they're concerned about is two things for those schools. One is the equity that they look at is how schools are funded from the state level. In other words, the money that comes from the state legislature to help out the local schools in performing their function, which is to educate kids. So one part of that has to do with equity in funding. The second part of that deals with property wealth, and schools differ in property wealth. And so that's another part of equity, because some schools may have in their district, they may have shopping malls, they may have factories, they may have power plants or whatever, which make them property wealthy. Or it may be the reverse, that they don't have those things, so they're not as able to provide the same amount of education with their dollars. Now, in particular, what I want to come back to is I'll tell you where Stillwater District 834 Stillwater area schools rank in terms of those two ingredients. One is property wealth, and the other one has to do with funding from the state. So first of all, C districts is a coalition of 59 school districts, and they serve approximately 230,000 children, which comes out to be really about 1/3 of Minnesota's K-12 students. And C districts range in size. The largest is Anoka Hennepin Schools, which is 34,000 schools. And Anoka Hennepin is interesting in that they are memberships in both C and in the Metro organization, which is called the Association for Metropolitan School Districts, or as many times you'll hear people refer to it as AMSD. But again, Anoka Hennepin and 3 other districts have chosen to be in both organizations. And as I mentioned earlier, for a long time, we were in both as well. C districts are characterized in some ways to include both suburban and outstate districts. So in a minute, I'm going to show you a map of where the schools in C come from. So the biggest part of what I'm going to try to do is to give you a feel for C, and one of the things that they've done promotional testimonial is a video. Barb, to start the video, I don't see anything. Okay, just click one more time. And it takes about 30 seconds. And it should come on for you. Yes.
She's not talking.
And most of the people that you're going to see here are school board members or
understand
administrators.
and explain to our stakeholders, our community, our school board, our legislators, what funding inequity means and how it impacts our students and our community.
C is our ear at the Capitol. They help keep us informed about what's going on, what bills are coming through that might affect our schools. It's very important that every child in Minnesota has equal access to a good education. That's what C is all about.
At Delano Public Schools, we rely on the experience of our C lobbyists to represent our needs. It's extremely important that our legislators that make these critical decisions in the future of our students to be present at the Capitol and to make sure that we are represented. I feel very confident in our staff at C to do just that.
What I like most about the C organization is the experienced lobbyists that the organization has. Not only are they attuned to working with our legislatures and knowing legislative policies and procedures. If we had to pay for a lobbyist of this caliber, our school district couldn't afford it. So being able to leverage our resources with other school districts provides us an opportunity to have high-quality lobbyists working for us and working for our kids in our district.
C provides resources to help us communicate with our parents and legislators. Their staff is able to take complex issues and break them down so parents can understand exactly how their school will be impacted. The C website is also a treasure trove of valuable information that you can customize to your school district. When I look at C and I combine the depth and breadth of their information and their resources with the tireless efforts of their staff, I am convinced that they're a valuable resource and a critical partner when it comes to advocating for our children.
One of the biggest benefits of the C organization alone is just their resources and what I can bring back to my school board. I would say 3-4 times a year I bring information that's straight from the C organization back to my school board, educating them so that they can make good, strong decisions on the students in our school district is really, really vital.
I find C meetings to be very helpful, very informative, and very enjoyable. There are a number of legislators and political and educational experts that come and talk to us, and we also get to ask them questions, which is also extremely helpful.
C meetings are excellent for networking. I have the opportunity to meet a broad range of people who share common interests. It is so valuable to share information and perspectives with other school districts that are facing similar challenges. I know that when I return to my school district, I will be better informed and more prepared to address important equity issues that impact our students.
I trust and believe in everything the C organization does for us at the legislature. C is a strong voice for our schools and our students.
Okay, so what I would like to do, and there's just a few slides here that I want to emphasize. One is one of the advantages of C is like AMSD. They have a constant presence at the state capitol. They lobby on issues that impact the district. And particularly what they do is they're always there. Like one of the bills I think some of you were aware of that I brought forward and I mentioned at the board table was the whole idea of that there was one of our representatives from Waconia, a man by Representative Nash, who came forward in terms of advocating for apprenticeship program for the state. And there would have been funding to go with that for $1 million. Now, unfortunately, that bill never got legs. It was never passed. But one of the things that you find out very, very quickly, and being part of the legislative committee, I found that out, that if you want to get something passed, you can't do it as a single district. You need a coalition. And that's where AMSD comes in, and that's where C comes in, is because one, C is represented by an executive secretary who functions as a lobbyist. It's Brad Lundell. And I think he's widely regarded as a very, very powerful lobbyist, similar to Scott Kroonquist, who lobbies for AMSD. And I've worked with both. Both men are very, very different in terms of personalities, but they're also very, very skillful in terms of what they do. So that's one of the big advantages. Another is school budgeting, school finance, as Kristen will attest to, is a very, very complicated process. But what our executive directors in both those organizations have been able to do is take it and put it in a format that's easier to understand and to communicate on those issues that impact C districts. Another thing that they do, and some of the speakers that you saw, board members, administrators, a few minutes ago, is that C meetings as well as AMSD meetings are great places for board members to make connections, to network with one another, to see what the issues are. What AMSD does very, very well is people talk from the metro area. What C does better than AMSD is to reach out in the hinterland, the rural areas, the outer ring suburb districts. And I think what the Democratic Party would say upon reflection is this is an area where they're not very effective. And I'm saying if we're going to be affected as a board, because I think we're a mix. We're kind of a metro district, and at the same time, we're kind of a C district. But if we're going to pass bills that are favorable to both, we need to form coalitions, we need to form connections with some of those outstate districts and some of those areas as well, let alone the understanding that comes from hearing their concerns and their issues as well. Also, what is an advantage for C is that you have a community liaison, and that presently is a woman by the name of Deb Griffith. Now, a couple years ago, we were very, very effective as a school district in getting action on what is called QCOM. And Deb Griffith played a very, very key role because what they did is they take all the C membership districts, and there's one day that they spend at the Capitol meeting their legislatures. And what we did with meeting our legislators is that Deb arranged the whole schedule. She did the trench work. And she made the contacts so that people like Tom and myself and Kathy Bukos and others, when we came to the Capitol, all we had to do was follow her along. And what we did the talking, but she did the logistics. That's no easy task. And I'm sure Barbara would tell you she doesn't want to do that because it's very, very complicated because you have to max a lot of different schedules. Something else Deb Griffith did, and before her, a woman who held that same position before she was a legislator, with Kathy Salzman. And what they also did is they went out to districts, very much like Mary Ciccone as well, and they took educational finance and explained it in many, many districts. And so those are the kinds of things where they meet the second part of this, which is they develop advocates, parents, community members, business leaders within C districts. And they stand ready to support community engagements in our districts. And I'm saying that's one of the things that C does that AMSD doesn't do. And that's not to knock AMSD. I'm saying I don't view them as competitors. I view them as complementary to one another. And so that's why I think they need consideration here as well. Again, their overall mission is all public school children must have equal access to a high-quality education regardless of where they live in Minnesota. Now, that last part I want to get to a little bit. One, if we were in C right now, in terms of property wealth, we would be with the highest schools in C. That's not necessarily the case when we match up in AMSD. Where we need C is in terms of categorical aids, things like special ed, because there we're not equitable in terms of the funding that we get. So that's where our mission and their mission match up very directly. So with that, that's pretty much what I have. This is contact information. The board has had this for a couple weeks. If you have questions, concerns, I'd gladly elaborate from what I know.
Chit?
Thank you, Mike. I have a lot of questions, but I'll just start with the last one you just commented about. Can you explain a little bit more about what you just said about the mental health component and funding, and you believe that C would be a better choice to tackle that issue? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that's part of their mission. Okay. And it wasn't mental health, it was special ed.
Or special ed, I'm sorry, you're right, special ed.
It was special education. Special and I'm saying that's an area, and that's a big topic in itself, but I'm saying one of the things I learned in grad school a million years ago, and I took a course on administration for special education. If you're really good at it as a district, you're going to attract more kids. But those are very costly programs. The kids deserve those services. But they also, if you're going to serve more kids, you need more specialized funding. And what we have found, and that's where we talk about cross-subsidy, and that's the part of special education that's not financed by the federal government or the state governments. It's what we have to make up. And what that does typically is encroach upon general education. Pull funds off there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Can I just ask two more? Mm-hmm. My initial interpretation of the difference in programs is, and correct me if you think I'm off base on this, but is that C is somewhat more interpersonal. It's a little bit possibly more intimate, where we can have a tighter relationship with these leaders. And I don't know if that was a little bit of my takeaway when I saw the video yesterday. It seemed a little bit more, I guess, just personal in nature, more relationship focused, possibly. But I'm also wondering, and I don't know if you're the right one for this question, but how many years have we been with AMSD, and why did we choose to leave C a couple years ago?
Yeah. Good questions. Number one, there is a cost to C. The membership is $10,154, and for the most part, it's based on enrollment. And so when Tom Nelson was here Tom recommended to the board, and we were looking at ways to be more frugal. And so Tom felt that we should withdraw. Now, ultimately, and again, my perspective, we ended up with a much bigger fund balance than we anticipated. But I think that was part of Tom's viewpoint or perspective on it. My feeling is this. Yes, it costs $10,154. That's money, from my perspective, that's well spent. It's like if you get 2% on the funding formula instead of 1.5% or instead of 1%, that's huge. That's not thousands of dollars, that's millions of dollars. So sometimes, and that's the way I look at this, especially from the aspect of lobbying and being effective, sometimes you got to spend money to get money. So I'm saying that's the biggest part of it. AMSD, I don't know if they're less interpersonal. I have, for the last 2 years, attended most of their meetings, not all. Before that, I attended for several years, I want to say 4 or 5 C meetings. And what any board member can do, there's typically in both organizations, someone is appointed from the board to be the person who goes to most of those meetings. But either one of those meetings, if any board member wants to sit in, and that's the value in your packets, you know who's going to be there. So like the last meeting that I was at, AMSD, and Bob was there and Denise was there, Bill Morris made a presentation. But here's one of the interesting things too in what Bill did. Bill surveyed a representative sample of all of those who were in AMSD districts. So they surveyed 1,100. The rest of the state, the C districts, they didn't look at. Now, what I'm saying is when Bill Morris works with C, guess who he surveys? He would survey C districts. And I'm saying we're kind of across both. And most likely as part of our strategic plan, we use Bill Morris, and then he would do just our district. But I'm saying that's why, I think they complement each other, not necessarily in competition with each other.
I understand that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did I answer all of your?
I think so, yeah. I appreciate your, I do agree with you that Stillwater in particular it's a very unique district and that we do cover quite a bit of different ground. So I do understand that argument. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paula?
All right, Mike, now you're in my wheelhouse, right? We're talking equity, so I was riveted by every word. So, and I agree with you that AMSD and C aren't necessarily, because they complement and support. And while there certainly is overlap, they really have their certain niche that can serve certain populations. So I agree with that. I think, and I don't know if the rest of the board knows this, but recently AMSD became part of a coalition called Partners for Equity Development. And I don't know if C is a part of it, but I know MSBA, the Minnesota School Boards Association, Education Minnesota, Minnesota State University at Mankato, Equity Alliance MN, the National Urban Alliance, WEMEP, which is the West Metro Education Program, MNEP, which is a lot of acronyms here, Minnesota Education Equity Partnership. That's Representative Mariani's organization. The Y, the Humanities Center, and the YWCA. So I share that only to say that I think that for me personally, just looking at that price tag of $10,000, and if we perhaps see where this coalition goes that AMSD is a part of and see what partnerships they can leverage, I think that if we had the money, I think there was an email sent out. I think we've been overspending our money in terms of board professional development or board organization. Sorry, my iPad broke. I'm just looking over at Shelley's. So I guess for me, it's the cost issue. It's not that I don't find that there's value to C, but I think that AMSD as well is well positioned to help us with our ongoing efforts around equity.
Yeah, and Paula, how I'd answer that, first of all, is that I have not attended C meetings in over 2 years. So I can't tell you if they've picked up equity as you define it. Obviously, AMSD has done that, and it's very important. And so I can see your advocacy for that, and I respect that, and I understand that. Anoka-Hennepin is a very diverse district. But I don't, so I'd be surprised if it wasn't in there somewhere. How active, how engaged, quite honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mike, just a couple things. I've got 6 districts that are members of both. Is that?
Oh, I got 4, so you found 2 more than I did.
Well, maybe they're considered out for some, but Anoka, Elk River, Fridley, Prior Lake, Rosemount, and South St. Paul.
Okay, and what I came up with Anoka-Hennepin.
Yep.
I came up with Rockford. I came up with Apple Valley.
That's Rosemount.
And then the third one is a coalition, and that's like Southwest Metro or something area. It's, if you go to the list of schools, it's way on the bottom.
Associate membership perhaps in one of those?
Yes, exactly. Okay. That's
well,
what it was.
Here's what,
so if you got more, I didn't know Elk River was, but
according to I think the sheets that you sent out, that's right. I took it from. But here's the way I looked at this. In addition to AMSD and C, I went through that list, thank you for sending that out early. I went through both lists to see what the programs were for each of them. And frankly, a lot of them doubled up with MSBA when we go to our conferences or seminars or whatever. Both of them did Bill Morris, both of them did Brenda Casalius, both of them did Representative Erickson, both of them did Senator Pratt, both did early learning, both lobby for education. Both have a presence at the Capitol, both attempt to influence state funding and policy, both offer professional development. Meetings are meant to connect administrators, board members, and education experts. Both give weekly updates and action alerts. Both have lobby days for community and board members. The difference I saw, and you've gone to AMSD, but this is according to C's program list. AMSD had speakers from the Met Council, TRA, Integration and Equity, to Paula's point, and Reimagine Minnesota. C had speakers from ESSA, Evolving Education, Bonds and Levies, and Tom Melcher. You and I saw ESSA at an MSBA one. So my question is not, do we choose to go C along with AMSD, but do we choose to go C along with AMSD and MSBA, where we're getting some of the, so are we already getting 2 groups doing this stuff?
In my response, you're an English teacher.
Yeah.
I'm married to an English teacher and a speech teacher. One of the things you do before an audience is you prepare for that audience. And I'm saying that's what Bill Morris did. When he came in, he talked to them representing his work, his examination, keyed in on them. If you take Tom Melcher is the sharpest guy around in terms of finance. I heard at AMSD, they said, don't ever die or retire on us. I mean, that's how highly they think of him. But my point is, when he goes to those 3 organizations, it's not the same presentation. It's similar, but he tailors it for his audience. And that's why I say it's sort of like one of the things I gave to each one of you was also a list, because you know some of those people who've gone on to other districts, and some of those have gone to rural districts, and you're already halfway there in terms of contacts. And for example, one of the areas that I feel very strongly in our own district that needs beefing up, and that was mentioned in the strategic plan, is career and technical education. We don't do enough there. Who does a better job, probably per kid, is probably some of the outstate areas, some of the more rural areas. if we're going to pass legislation, and particularly funding that goes with it, sometimes those can be allies because those people also vote on this. Just like I'm saying, it's quite different when we go to Forest Lake and I talk to Bob Detmer, and then when I talk to somebody who's in a more urban setting. And so this is just another attempt. But what I'd say is this. The last meeting was the first time I've ever said anything, I believe, at this board meeting about C membership. And so this is not something that for me went away. But I'm saying it's a tough call. And you got to balance off cost, and you got to balance off, is it redundant or is it complementary? That's your decision. My decision is, boy, I think this is something we should look at. I think it's something we can do. Can we do without it? Yes. Even when I go to the state legislature, and I go there a lot, Brad Lundell comes over and helps me and talks to me. I don't think that'll end. I just think we could play even a stronger role if we were part of them. And I see opportunities, and board members could make those individual decisions. In fact, they're in the packet that Barb prepared for you of pretty much what their programs are for the rest of the year. And if you saw one of those that you said, you know what, I think I can learn from that, you can go to either one of those. Just let Barb know, and there's not much that has to be done from that. I hope that answers your question.
Yep, Sarah?
Yep. So, Mike, we stopped having our membership with C 2 years ago in 2015, is that correct?
Yeah, 2015, 16, it would be the same time that Denise came here, but again, that was Tom's decision.
Spring before.
Yes.
Okay, and up until that point, we had memberships to both AMSD and
Yes.
C?
Yes.
Okay, so what it sounds like AMSD has kind of been leaning towards and is leaning in towards a more kind of urban approach, would you say, or more kind of with the Twin Cities, and that C is more of a rural kind of approach.
Yes.
So we're kind of, we have elements of both here.
Mm-hmm. And QCOM was a perfect example. So many people were involved. And I'm saying very early in the process, I mentioned Deb Griffith gave us help when we were in a later stage and we needed the author or one of our legislators to be a co-author of that bill. I was with Scott Kuhnquist and Ryan Lager and myself, and Scott was extremely helpful. He's the executive director for AMSD. So we modeled using both.
Yeah, I like what you said in your presentation about being able to have the additional resources, and that sometimes you need to invest in invest some money into something in order to get a better return, that it ends up being worth it because you end up with a better package, from the state. I think I would support us being members of both. I would say that we could try it for a year and see if we feel like it's beneficial.
Well,
I don't know.
do you want to make a motion
Yes.
to do that, and then you're going to
Have our discussion.
obvious second
Oh, yeah,
of
okay.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And my motion won't be for 1 year. My motion will be to join.
Okay, so your motion is
C.
to join. Are you willing to second that motion?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Tom?
Yeah, this is difficult, and, Mike, I really appreciate you bringing this to our attention. The problem I have is, I think the overall goal of all organizations is to better public education. I think we can rely on the fact that each is going to benefit public education when it goes to the legislature. I just don't think we have the luxury of being in multiple organizations. We have expenses. We heard from people speaking tonight about our fiduciary responsibility. And I think I think what I would like to see is, and it's a hard spot now because we've already approved going to AMSD, but I think from what you've pointed out and what I'm hearing from other members of the board, we should take a look at when these come up and evaluate which one is a better fit for us. And it may be that, because of our financial situation, we can only join one. Maybe AMSD isn't the best one next year, and C is the best one. I remember when I went to the legislature that day with C, they do a fantastic job. Brad is phenomenal. I appreciated when he would come to the board meetings and talk to us. I don't think anyone from AMSD has ever come to a board meeting and spoke to us. The problem, I think, what came up was when we were at the day at the legislature, one of the bills they were talking about was the all facilities legislation. And so we were going around with the group from Stillwater, but we also had the individual from Forest Lake. And the message, I thought, was convoluted because we already had the all facility because we were one of the top 20, and Forest Lake didn't. So it was kind of like when we're meeting with the legislator, the Forest Lake person's trying to get in all he can about the all facilities legislation, and we're talking about Q-Comp and those kind of things. So, there's never going to be an equal balance. It just, for me, I think what we should do is there should be a competition maybe between them, and that we should decide as a board what do we think are important aspects of belonging to any organization, have a grid, and then when this comes up again, we can rank each one and make that decision. So.
Any other comments?
Well, just because I haven't said anything, I think for me, the reason I asked about the budget is because I always want to stay within the budget. But at the same time, I think we don't fit in either box. I think we're just a different district that's made up differently, and so I think that there are benefits to both. Where we are more metro, AMSD can help us. Where we're looking at the more rural, then C can help us. So I think it's hard to say we only want one. I think we might be stronger with both. And maybe it's worth a try.
Yes.
Just a question about membership. Is it a 1 year, 5 year, 10-year type of situation?
Actually, you do it yearly.
Annual
and so you
membership?
can withdraw. It does not require you announcing, gee, next year we're not going to be in there. It's helpful organizations to know that because they like to plan their budgets. And so if you're in and out, that's really hard for them. And I'm looking at it from their point of view. I'd be hard put if you said to me, you got to choose one or the other. Because I've experienced both, and they have strengths. And I respect their different personalities, but I respect the staffs in both, too. They're very strong.
Paul?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to tell you that the fiduciary that is a concern. But what really sticks out with me with the C is the community engagement component. So I'm leaning towards giving it a shot for 1 year.
Thank you.
All those in favor of having a C membership for the coming school year, I guess, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Oppose?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, passes. Thank you. We have board member reports, and first the chair report. Let me start with Valley Outreach is again doing snack packs, and I want to thank them for doing that. And if there are community members that know that there are kids who would benefit, please sign up with your secretaries at your schools. The National School Board Association sent out a statement regarding, in response to the Trump administration's decision to rescind the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And I'd like to read that National School Board Association statement. Public schools are a beacon of hope and opportunity for students in our country. The schools in our neighborhoods have educated generations of children, regardless of factors such as race, ethnic background, and immigration and socioeconomic status, enabling them to contribute to our economy and strengthen our democracy. Since the first public school was founded, they have gladly accepted the immense responsibility given to them to help students achieve their full potential. Today, our schools are educating the most diverse student population in history, providing equitable access and ensuring that all students are educated at levels no previous generation attempted to achieve. Public schools continue to make progress in helping students prepare for college, careers, and life. However, progress is threatened if students are fearful of coming to school. NSBA is deeply concerned by the administration's decision to end the DACA program. We're longstanding supporters of educating all students regardless of immigration status. Now that the issue is solely before Congress, we urge it to amend the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996 to authorize the cancellation of removal, resolve immigration status, and work toward U.S. citizenship of undocumented students who are long-term residents. Board members, you've got a sheet that lists a revised board calendar going forward. And basically what it does is move 3 of our meetings that were scheduled as learning sessions to business meetings and moves them from central services to City Hall here. And it basically moves 3 meetings, I think September 28th, October 26th, and November 16th. Unless there is opposition to that, we will vote on this revised board calendar at our next meeting. So if you've got difficulties with that, please think about it. And as I say, we'll take a vote at our next meeting on September 28th.
Can I just ask a quick question, George? Is there a reason why we can't have a business meeting at CSB?
No.
There's no reason?
No.
Okay.
Sarah, we had conversations about that, and we thought might be confusing for people if it's here or there.
Yeah,
so we
I
thought
get that,
consistency.
yeah.
Other than that, there's no.
Yeah.
Board members have alluded to that we've been meeting with consultant Mary Ciccone. Met a couple times related to governance and our school board goals, and hopefully we move the superintendent report as a result of that discussion. Hopefully we will get better as a board. Everybody raised their hands tonight to be recognized. That was a step forward. So hopefully we'll keep moving in that direction as we go forward. Our board member reports also, one of the things that I think we kind of agreed to at our last session with Mary was that the board member reports, when we report, we would try to kind of keep an overview of how what we're saying impacts the district. Is it beneficial information, or is it just kind of to talk about what we've been doing the last couple of weeks? So I guess as we give our reports coming up here now, just a thought, if you could tie it into how what you're doing or what you're reporting on impacts the district in some way, that would certainly be beneficial. And with that, we'll take board member reports. Anybody want to start on one end and work our way down?
I'll start. I have nothing to report. How's that, George?
Brevity is fantastic.
Yes, I thought you might like that.
And that'll give Jen one thing that she can.
You can have mine. I yield my time to Jen.
I'm going to say that I have nothing to report right now. This is your one time. There you go. That's it.
All right, I've got a book, so no, I have nothing to report.
Wow.
George, it's turning out to be a very good birthday for you. Let me tell you that, because I also will pass.
And I as well.
Mike?
I won't pass.
Oh.
2 things I want to talk about, and one of those is extremely important in terms of really legislation, and that is the Minnesota School Boards Association is conducting kind of a tour. They're going around to various locations in the state of Minnesota. Next Tuesday and Wednesday, they're going to be in St. Paul. And all board members are invited to those. They prefer that you pre-register, but you can walk on if your schedule at the last minute lets you go. If you want pizza, be there at 5:30. And there's no cost to that. But the crux of it is this. Minnesota School Boards Association puts out a platform, legislative platform. That is going to be developed in early December. December 1 and 2, they have a delegate assembly. The purpose of the 2 meetings in St. Paul next week, should you choose to go, if you have a burning legislative issue that you want to speak to, I plan to be there on Tuesday. I'm going to talk about the cross-subsidy and about special education for sure. Paul and I met, talked about this earlier today. I may, depending on the other discussion, also talk about career and technical education. But the point is, from that, that information is collected, that becomes, they're also doing, and I'm jumping around, they also do resolutions. If you think of a resolution that you want to go to the Minnesota School Boards Association, the deadline on that is September 29th. And so the legislative committee is going to meet before then and see if we want to submit anything to them. Does that make sense then? Okay, so I tied that. The last one I want to mention as well is 916. And we had a meeting earlier this week. 2 biggest things, and they do influence all of us, is 916 has an education foundation as well. Anybody wishes to donate, that's wonderful. One of the biggest parts of that is not only to augment the needs in the classrooms, but they also give scholarships to kids going on. Our district generally, probably through the partnership plan, donates about $250. Last year we got over $2,000. I think it was actually probably even larger than that in scholarships that our kids got. So it's really more of an investment. But anyway, the past president of 916 Foundation spoke to us and talked about the programs and things they were doing. So if you want more, let me know. We also, as a carryover, something I talked about at our last meeting, is there was a mini revolution or dissatisfaction with some of the contracts that were negotiated. And so we spent probably about 30, 40 minutes talking about that at the last meeting. A fallout to that is, following that, I did offer my services and volunteered to be on the personnel committee. It was no accident, and they did appoint me. So, but the cows are already out of the barn, so I don't know what I can do there. The last one on that that's very, very important, well, it is because it has financial impact. I think all of you are aware of Carter Blue Education Center. When they were building the new building, Pankalo, they were going to put in some ceiling tiles that no longer meet code. So what they did is not only put the new tiles in there, but they had to go back to Carter Blue and take out the tiles that they had there. And the cost was not cheap. It was $64,000. Makes my request for $10,154 seem a little smaller. I don't say that in jest. Those are just things sometimes that happen with building projects. So with that, I'm done.
Okay, we did have an EMID board business meeting. You should have the minutes in your notes. Just want to highlight that we met at Inver Grove Heights District. One of the speakers was Chad Poitra, who's the American Indian Community Liaison, working with Inver Grove in South St. Paul, and he talked about his engagement with the families in those 2 districts. And I did get an email from Denise Stevens, who is the community liaison, communications liaison for Stillwater Native American Parent Advisory Group. And she sent me notes about the first 2 years of Stillwater Area Schools Native American Parent Advisory Committee action. She says over the past 2 school years, narratives from a Native American perspective became the overarching theme of our parent committees, partnerships, and activities, which featured traditional storytelling in various forms, oral and written legends and stories, visual art, language, music, and drama. We are especially proud of the relationships we have established and built within Stillwater area public schools and the community. Our classroom partnership teachers told us they highly valued their students' immersive experiences with cultural experts, and virtually all of the Native American experts who visited commented on the warm, welcoming reception they experienced and are eager to return. Each year, we look forward to expanding our activities and initiatives this school year to include more schools and students in our classroom partnerships and build additional lasting relationships within the community. Very positive letter, very happy to receive that. With that, could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Did you want to do a policy? Or are you
I'm
gonna do-
sorry, yeah.
I did need to talk.
Sorry. George was looking for it.
Working group.
Just means Son of Peter.
Anyone, is that me?
Which is similar.
Okay, we spent some time today in our standing meeting to discuss how to create a more fluid system. I think we have, we've got some very outdated policies, and your point was well taken earlier. I actually also received a phone call from a resident who just had some questions about our fundraising policies, if we have that, if we don't have that. So I think that's part of a much bigger discussion that will come along the way. But just for the sake of this moment, we are going to start with MSBA. So we're going to, Barb is putting together kind of a timeline for us, and I'm exceptionally impatient with this because I'm bothered that we have these 50 million year old policies. So we're going to get this done, and we're going to start with MSBA and kind of go from there. And hopefully we can create a more strategic, fluid renewal policy going forward. So thank you. Thanks.
Any other working group reports? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
I had it before.
All right, you second?
I'm seconding.
That's all we need. We're adjourned.